Last Sunday, we listened together in the Spirit of Jesus to one of Jesus' parables, one of the great hits of his collection of parables, the parable of the prodigal son. And in that parable, Jesus describes the homecoming of the prodigal. The father is so delighted to see his son that, violating all rules of personal dignity in his day and age, Dad hikes up his robes and starts to run for his lost son. Wraps him up in his warm embrace, calls for his servants to bring him a mantle for his frame, a ring for his finger, sandals for his feet. And the best part of all, the father calls on his servants to slaughter the fatted calf because it's time for a great party. For this son of mine, Dad says, was dead to me and now is alive. What once was lost now is found. Today, we are hearing a story about how God's generosity that is symbolized so beautifully by the father of the prodigal son in last week's parable, that generosity that is divine, that comes from God's heart, is contagious. And to get at it, that contagious generosity, we hear a story from the Gospel of John that describes a very horrible experience that one family has undergone, an experience that all families have to face at one point or another. I want you to think about that experience before I go into the scriptures. I want you to think about someone you love, someone who has died. I want you to remember how beautiful their laugh was, how warm their embrace, how funny or quirky their way of communicating, all of the little eccentricities and idiosyncrasies that made that person who they are, were, always will be to you and to God. Do you remember them? And then I want you to wonder to yourself, what would you give for one more moment with that dearly departed saint? What would you give for one last cup of coffee or glass of wine? What would you give for one last dinner, one last walk together? If you're like me, you'd give a lot, even with the promise of heaven bouncing around your soul, the promise that there will be a great family reunion. I bet, even with that promise, if you could, you would give so much to have one more time with that dearly departed one. Death stalks us all, stalks all our families. And it is that exact specter that confronts the family we hear about in today's gospel. Just a few days before this, Jesus heard that his buddy Lazarus had died. Responding to the family's request for his presence, Jesus travels to Bethany, but it takes him a while to get there. Boy, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge how frustrating and challenging it can be when you feel like you're waiting on God to answer a prayer. I get it. So does that family. By the time Jesus shows up, Lazarus has been in his tomb for days. And his sisters, Mary and Martha, feel a little bit let down by the Lord Jesus. In an incredible, miraculous moment, a moment that foreshadows Jesus' own bodily resurrection, our Lord calls Lazarus out of his tomb and orders his friends and family to unbind him from his grave clothes. Sometime after that, not long, Jesus goes to their house for dinner. And there, Mary, Lazarus' sister, comes to the Lord with a jar of expensive perfume. And she uses that jar of expensive perfume to anoint Jesus' body. And Jesus explains in that conversation over dinner that she is preparing him for his ministry. She is her generosity is going to be a part of the story of his life, death, and resurrection. And it is beautiful. It is generous. It is outrageously generous. It is outrageously generous in a way that honors an outrageously generous God. And then, and there's always one, and then somebody gets to griping. Judas Iscariot complains in his self-righteousness that the money that was spent on that perfume should have been used more wisely. And just in case you are thinking of writing Judas off, let me just explain for you the value in our dollars of that jar of perfume. This is going to tell you that Lazarus and his sisters, Mary and Martha, are fairly wealthy people. So Judas Iscariot says that the perfume could have been sold for 300 denarii. That's a little silver Roman coin. Let me show it to you. That's the head and the tail of denarius. And the old rule of thumb is that in the ancient world, a denarius was about 1 day's wage for a low-skilled worker, for a full day's work. Now, you might think, oh, well, the perfume then in our dollars would only be about $300. Maybe a little wasteful, but not too bad. But wait, Matt, would you show him the next equation? If you compare the value of that perfume to similar wages today, the hourly minimum wage in Arizona is $12.80. Does that sound right? So if you work 8 hours a day, you make about $100. And if that perfume was worth 300 days' work of the average worker, that bottle of perfume, in equivalent value, would be worth $30,000. And Mary pours that $30,000 bottle of perfume on the feet of our Lord Jesus. So you might cut Judas a little bit of slack, because I'm sure there's some part of us, some Judas that is lurking on our insides that recoils at that kind of use of that kind of item, of that kind of value. But I want you to remember, what would you do? What would you give for one more coffee, one more glass of wine, one more meal, one more walk with that dearly departed one? Mary is not asking God to return to her brother. Mary is giving thanks to God in Christ through the Spirit for the generosity she has already been shown. God's generosity, outrageous generosity is contagious. And those of us who are the beneficiaries of that generosity, we are called into that generosity. And our generosity, like Jesus' own and Mary's, will be contagious to the world around us. And in a world that operates out of a scarcity mentality where there is never enough, and we have to fight and scrape for our share of that not enough, as people of God, it is our calling, part of our work of evangelism, is to be generous despite the seeming stupidity of it. This word this morning, as far as I'm concerned, for Peace Lutheran Church, is not a word of challenge. It is a word of affirmation. I look at you and your life together, and you are committed to using your time, your talent, your treasure, your trust, and your teams to serve God in a way that reflects Jesus' generosity. You are so good at that. And not just a couple of you, so very many of you. And each and every day and week, more and more of you are being drawn into this outrageous generosity. And I'm grateful to watch it. I'm grateful to see it. I'm grateful to participate in it. You hear about a war in Eastern Europe, and you write checks that, through a divine conspiracy, come out to $8,000 in almost no time. You hear a challenge from your pastor to raise money for music. Well, and there's definitely a spirit of Judas that could say, it's music. Maybe we should be spending our money on something that actually helps the world around us. But I want to affirm for you the importance of lavishing our generosity on God's work in gratitude for what God has done for us, trusting that just as the example of Mary's generosity has echoed through the ages, likewise, when we contribute to the life of the church, beautifying it, clarifying its declaration of the gospel, that generosity performs miracles in the life of the world. And y'all are super good at making sure that our generosity to God through the institution of the church still serves the last, the lost, the least, the little, and the lonely of this neighborhood and this world. This isn't so much a word of challenge this morning. It is a word of affirmation. Thank you for allowing God's generosity to work through you. And look at your lives and see if there are any other places where you are being called to express your generosity. Could it be that you are being invited to be generous in this next season of your life, not so much with your money? Maybe you're doing great being generous with money, but maybe it is your time. Or maybe it is your wisdom, or some other part of your life that God is inviting you to give to Jesus. And whatever gifts you give will be like the gift of Mary. They will be scooped up in the great story of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. They will become a part of preparing him for his crucifixion. They will become a part of freeing him for his resurrection. And in all that beauty, one day, you and I and the faithful who have gone before us, we will all delight in the beauty of what God pulls off for this stingy, scared world through divine, nonsensical generosity. Amen.